everyone, welcome to a brand new All Access. I'm Kai Savas, and I'm here with the amazing and talented Jonathan Beard and Henri Wilkinson, part of Tutti Music Partners. Their third member is Ed Trybek, but he could not be with us today, but we're so thankful for Jonathan and Henri to join us. So, hey guys, nice to see you.
Hey Kaya.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. So let's just start for anybody who doesn't know you guys, to just get a little intro. I would love to know, kind of take me back to your origin story. Let's go back to kind of that point in your life. I always love to know kind of the point in people's lives when they discovered music. Was it something that you just happened upon? Was it gradual? Did you run away from it? Did it just spark an interest? There was maybe an aha moment, maybe there wasn't. I'm just curious, in your lives, when did that start? When did music start becoming kind of part of you? So Jonathan, maybe you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I started playing cello when I was 6, and that was the beginning of my formal musical life. Somewhere in middle school, I discovered film music. And at a similar point, although I didn't really know what orchestration was quite yet, sort of consciously, I was paying attention to that in parallel as well. As I was discovering my favorite film composers, I was learning names of orchestrators who they worked with. So the sort of decision to pivot in that direction came later in life. I don't think too many people are consciously thinking about that in middle school, but that's where the awareness started, and then that just grew through college and into professional career. I've maintained a dual composing and orchestration portfolio. Composing is more in the concert music space, and we get to orchestrate on amazing media projects. So that itch is very much scratched in the orchestration world. So that's kind of my background.
Absolutely. So Henri, how about yourself?
Sure. So yeah, similarly, I started playing piano at a fairly young age. I think when I was 5 years old, I told my parents I wanted to start piano lessons. So I started, playing piano, and then I knew kind of in elementary school already that I wanted to be a musician. So it was a very, I know a lot of people struggle after high school and stuff trying to find careers. It was never a struggle for me in sense of knowing which direction I was, inclined to go in. So in high school, I started playing, getting more into jazz piano and stuff like that. And then in college, I got to, start experiencing more composing, arranging, stuff like that. And then after I finished my college, I'm from Finland. After I finished my, I got my master's degree there. I was kind of just weighing my options, and I wasn't sure what to do. Had gotten a few opportunities at that point to write music for some, commercial, small TV show stuff, and so I was like, oh, maybe I should, see what comes out of it, pursue that, and so I noticed there was a program at USC related to film scoring, a 1-year program, and applied, got a grant, so I was able to afford it as well, and
nice.
And then so I came here in 2007, straight from Finland, to LA, and spent a year at USC doing a postgrad certificate, and during that time, I really realized that film music is really what I want to be doing if I can possibly make it a career out here. And so then I was kind of like, after school, I was just kind of fresh off the boat. I knew nobody, but there are a few people who I'd met during my school year who were kind enough to give me some of my first gigs here as an orchestrator, arranger, composer. And then ultimately what brought us to this day is I guess when we met each other, which was in 2009, I believe. And so in 2009, Bear McCreary actually approached all of us and brought us together to orchestrate for his upcoming TV shows and movies and video games and all that stuff. And so we really started working together in 2009, and realized pretty soon from that point on how well we work together with each other. And so then little by little, that kind of formalized into our partnership that we have these days.
Wow.
Yeah, we didn't formalize the partnership as an entity really until 2015, but by then we had really been working constantly together for
Yeah.
6 years. So it was pretty seamless.
So was Bear kind
Also,
of
I
the,
should
the connecting tissue that brought you guys together? Did you guys know each other at all before working with
we
Bear?
didn't
Oh,
we
wow.
didn't. So yeah, he hired all of us within a few weeks of each other in 2009, and that's how we originally met. Also, Ed and Henri are USC alums. I am a proud Bruin. So while we hate each other on that one level, we're also a testament to unity and coming together.
Yes, there we go.
In the spirit of movies.
So how was there kind of an instant chemistry that you guys knew that you guys were able to work together and was like, this works? And what was it scary to kind of start like a company together and say like, okay, we're going to be a team and move forward?
It was pretty organic, in that what mainly ended up happening was just sort of the situation on the ground kind of suggesting a really sort of smart and sound path forward.
Mm-hmm.
By that point in 2015, we'd been working like week in and week out, particularly on a lot of television, but feature films and the like as well. And when we weren't working together with a client like Bear, we were finding that for our own clients, we were pulling in each other anyway.
All the time.
Yeah, to basically help when it got to crunch time. And the sort of conceptual change that we made, which we were already kind of, I think, Henri, you'd agree, like we were already essentially in practice already doing this, but we made a conscious decision at some point, which is if we see that the post-production schedules are getting shorter and shorter and shorter in like everything,
Yeah.
in film, music, even games. What if we're pulling each other in on every project all the time from day one instead of sort of ad hoc or at the end?
Yeah.
And what are the benefits of that? And the benefits were fairly obvious. We already worked together really smoothly and fluidly, but also it allowed us to have a lot of the conversations that might need to happen in like crunch time under immense stress if you've been trying to do it all yourself up to a certain point. It allowed us to have all of those musical conversations earlier in the process and really unify the score from day one.
Right, and I think that's an important thing. Like, rather than bringing in people at the last minute or bringing people in on a project specific basis, just having like the unified approaches on how to approach any given project. It's always the same. We don't have to have that conversation every time we start a new project. It's already an established way of working, and I mean that helps. I mean, another thing, like Jonathan was saying, the having a partnership provides so many benefits over not having one. We have families, so it offers flexibility in that sense, where we can still
balance of life.
Yeah.
Good for balance of life. We can still take care of our clients. In fact, I feel like we can take care of our clients often better than we could individually speaking, because there's always somebody to take care of the client.
Support team. Yeah.
A support team, and so composers hopefully feel more comfortable, not relying only on one person, but there's actually a team behind them supporting them, and so we feel like the quality of work improves as well. I think all of us are as similar as our backgrounds are, in the sense that we started playing music early and got into music early. We're also all come from different backgrounds, and we kind of have our own strengths, and I feel like the three of us is bigger as a whole than in the three individual people.
Yeah,
kind of like
absolutely.
a fellowship or something.
Yeah, something like just kind of brotherhood or fellowship for some unified journey. So
yeah, I was just going to add one thing based on what Henri was just saying, which is also by having that fluidity of workflow established and kind of the structure in place, we do every project by project, we do have lots of conversations at the beginning, but we get to have them be almost completely musical. And like approaching sort of, okay, these themes, these motifs that we're starting to see in these early cues from the composer, how do we want to treat them? We can run that by the composer. We can basically be establishing an approach to important musical material very early on in the project that can then stay very sort of unified throughout the whole thing instead of getting a little bit scrambled near the end when things get tight.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of taking on an insurmountable challenge, let's move. I mean, we could spend, hours talking about each individual people. We're here to talk about Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power and wow, what an amazing series. Congratulations on season 1. I mean, it's out there in the world now, and fantastic. I mean, the scale of this thing can't even describe it. I mean, for a television series, it's just completely, unprecedented. So talk to me. I mean, you look at like what Peter Jackson and Howard Shore did, back with the films, and this is kind of like, all of those expanded more. So talk to me those initial steps when you got that maybe call from Bear, and what was kind of the starting point of this, and where in the production did you jump in as orchestrators to start kind of working on all of this?
So this was an interesting project in the sense that we received a very, interesting call from Bear. Just like, hey, cryptic. Yes, that's the word. That's the word I was looking for. Yes, cryptic. A very cryptic call from Bear about 3 months before we actually started, actual work on this show. And not only was it that, it was like we literally. He was like, I would like to have a conversation with 3 of you, but only the 3 of you, and nobody can hear this conversation. And I need you to sign NDAs before we have this conversation.
No assistants, no support layers,
no
just the 4 of us.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so then, during that Zoom meeting, he told us what was coming down the pipeline, and then
like, are we going to get fired, or is there something really special?
Right.
About
yeah, were you guys nervous? You're like, what the hell is this?
I was a little like, what NDA? Yeah, no, that definitely had not happened before over the 12 some years that we've been working with Bear. So that was a first. So then we received the call. We and he also expressed some of his initial musical ideas at that point that he had for the musical language that he was conceiving for the show, and so we were kind of floating ideas back and forth with him a little bit, and so that was really the beginning of it all. And then a few months later, we kind of got into the meat and grind of it all in terms of orchestration. Yeah,
it was definitely under the largest veil of secrecy of anything. Like Henri was saying, we've been lucky enough to work on some pretty big properties in the past, and we've had to sign NDAs before, but there was clearly a strong concern from the studio on making sure that there were no leaks on this project. We didn't have cue names, we didn't have a show title, like it was all just blank. Like there were numbers to keep track of things, and that was it. And that was from day one when we had that first conversation with Bear.
Wow. So talk to me, what is the process for you guys? Because you guys were working kind of in obscurity and secrecy. I'm curious about the workflow. Maybe some people don't know when orchestrators come in. How is the relationship with the composer? When are you getting Bear's compositions, and what is your process, I guess, for all 3 of you to start digging in? How do you split up responsibilities? I'm curious about just kind of the general workflow of the whole thing.
Right. Well, so essentially the process primarily goes that if all is going to plan, orchestrators don't usually need to work on finishing off the orchestral elements of the score until all the music is approved. That can't always happen, and it didn't happen 100% of the time on this show. There's sometimes that we had to start working a little bit earlier and then make some adjustments on the fly. But essentially for each episode, first of all, Bear was under a really tight writing schedule.
I can't imagine that amount of music with all the other stuff he's going on too. Yeah.
And we joked, it's like each episode is between 63 to 75 minutes long, and
with the sweeps and all that stuff.
Every episode has between 65 and 77 minutes of music. It's kind of like there was the whole thing is scored, and then there's usually a little extra. And so what will happen is, Bear is very detailed in his compositional mock-ups and sort of in his mock-up sketches and all of that. They're incredibly detailed, but we've also developed a nice shorthand with him over the years where he's able to articulate to us just through words, essentially, what little things he still wants filled in. And so that we can approach that according to his desires and expectations. Nobody knows his music better than him. So he can, he can give us really precise marching orders on kind of what still he hasn't gotten 100% to the finish line in terms of the tiny little finessings. He wrote every minute of music on this show, which for this amount of music and in television is fairly unusual. And it was just a gargantuan lift compositionally for him. So if we were able to add that last, few percent of sparkle to whatever was needed, we could do that in tight timelines. So I don't know, Henry, if I'm forgetting something of how this all
I think that's pretty much it for the orchestration process. I mean, our work still then continues, of course, after that in terms of session production. So this was a real treat for us to be able to have some of the best musicians in the world for all these shows, and
that was also affected by Bear.
Yeah, you guys produced the recording sessions, right?
That's
that
true.
was, so you saw this thing through all the way.
Yeah, so we were there to help out.
At least through recording.
Through recording.
Yes. After recording, it kind of is, we're done. Our
right.
Done,
and it becomes part of the life of what's being put in the edit and the mixing and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but yeah, no, I mean, that was incredibly fun, and it offered some, just trying out different artistic choices with the choir and just experimentation a little bit during the sessions as well, which of course, and just hearing the music to come to life, played by real instruments, live instruments, by some of the best players in the world. I mean, that's just a tremendous treat for us.
Yeah.
The sort of schedule workload of this is bigger also than any show we've ever seen. I mean, we were doing 4 days of orchestral recording for every episode. And that's not counting choir. And as Henry was saying, we could do some experimentation. We kind of needed to do some moderate experimentation throughout the recording process as well, in order to give Jason LaRocca, the mixer, some options of kind of how to approach the mix. And Bear was always available if there was something we needed to run by him quick, and say, hey, is this sounding the way you need? And he could chime in for a couple of minutes with some quick notes or whatnot. But frankly, 4 days in each of his writing windows for each of these episodes, 4 days was far too valuable for him to not be writing. So, we were definitely honored that he trusted us enough to take on a leadership role in that part of the process and get the score recorded. But that allowed him the time he needed to actually write this immense amount of music.
Yeah, man, that trust must have come just from, the years that you guys worked together. That's something that's forged through being in the trenches together over so many other projects. So
yeah.
So you guys, it was all 6 months, I think, for the entire series of orchestrating.
Yeah, about 6 months of active orchestration, but we were doing some work before that. So we were kind of in it, 8 months, Henry, maybe?
Something like that with the recording sessions. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So when I'm just curious how, when you approach this thing, when you're essentially bringing the music to life, of course you're going to be compared, I think, to the past of, you have this trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, that Howard Shore's music, of course, has lived, in everybody's life. So I'm curious, how did you want this to make it feel Tolkien? How did you want it to make sure Bear's voice was represented? And what kind of things did you want this, this music to feel like when you guys were orchestrating, the instrumentation that you were picking and these flourishes that you're adding? What did you want the music to do for the world of Rings of Power?
Well, this is, I think Bear has talked about some of this in his interviews, but he has mentioned that he's, while paying homage to the original trilogy and to Howard Shore, of course, tremendous score for both trilogies. He wanted to do something, unique and kind of do his own thing that would still fit in the world of Tolkien and still feel like it was part of Middle Earth and that. So I feel like in the musical, realm of what he did, it is fascinating because you hear Howard Shore's theme at the beginning of the show, and then you hear Bear's score, and it feels like the same thing. It's all part of the same world to me. So I think he definitely nailed it in terms of approach and feel what Middle Earth and what the Tolkien world needs to feel like. And I mean, part of it is, like you said, some of those colors, instrumentation choices, in addition to having, full big orchestra, full big choir, was it 40-piece choir?
40-piece, I think, yeah.
And percussion, we had world instruments. So we had all these ethnic world instruments kind of helping, bring different cultures and people, together in those colors as well.
We also had the children's choir on some of the episodes as well, so that made the choral forces even bigger.
And of course, a big part of it is we had various soloists as well. So we had like solo soprano, often representing Galadriel's theme and stuff like that. So,
and there was stuff being sung in Tolkien languages, right? It was so.
Oh, yes.
What was it like working in these kind of fantasy languages and recording a choir with that? Talk to me about that.
It's kind of amazing because the sort of world in which Bear is working, as Henri was saying, it's very much kind of in the same lineage and line, but of the movies, but also because it's taking place thousands of years earlier, sort of in the timeline. And Bear's talked about this quite eloquently. There is room for some other sonic approaches that can be for sounds of like societies that won't be there or will be significantly transformed by the time we're getting to the Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Good age, yeah.
So there's there's this sort of vast landscape within which one can still musically travel and still line things up. And I think that one of Bear's real commitments on the choral side was to, even though we're dealing with these languages that a vast majority of viewers are not going to know,
right?
They are existent languages, and there is a relatively robust vocabulary for a number of them. And it was important to Bear that the words that were being sung as part of the score, they're absolutely part of the score tapestry. It's not like this is just a choral score being supported by orchestra. It's all woven together, but the words that the choir is singing are in the original languages, and they are meaningful and appropriate poetry for what is going on in the given scenes. So so he pulled out a bunch of stops on that.
No, and so it was definitely a team that brought that together. We had language experts providing all those translations and the correct pronunciations. So like choir sessions, we actually had a pronunciation guide from all these Tolkien language experts, so that the choir would be able to basically pronounce them as they should be pronounced. And so it was very detailed in terms of approach. But of course, there's a couple of interesting funny bits stemming from that I remember. One was I remember we were applying some lyrics to a cue, and Bear was looking over the score, and he was like, wait a minute, this is not at all what these lyrics, this scene should be totally internal, and we're going like extra, like bombastic with these lyrics. And so I was like, okay, I guess we need to reconceive this lyrics. Another funny bit that I remember was at the choir sessions, there was definitely times where either the conductor or the singers vocalists would be asking, like, hey, so what is this language? It sounds familiar. It's it's an old language.
Just a very old language.
And you guys were working with no picture, right? Like you didn't have anything from the show to play against or anything. So it was kind of all.
Yeah, and it's not crucial as an orchestrator. You don't need to see picture most of the time, unless you're getting heavily into arranging, which this project was not. Bear had already very clearly set the musical sort of scope for every scene. You know, we weren't having to like fill in gaps of sort of dramatically what's going on.
Right.
However, because we were sort of, you know, the lyric elements were being orchestrated in, adapted kind of by team. There were a number of people involved, all the way up to the showrunners approving lyrics and stuff. Like Henri's anecdote, you know, that's one of those spots where like the lack of picture, you know, kind of contributes a little bit, but it's more a humorous side of like, okay, and this is why we check. This is why we have a back and forth. But yeah, we were not seeing any of the visuals while we were writing. Bear could explain to us, you know, I mean, the people on his team who were seeing it, it was very minimal.
Yeah.
He had access to video and really not much beyond that in terms of his assistant team. So he could explain to us very clearly what needed to happen dramatically or what was going on. But in terms of actually seeing the footage, the vast majority of which we were discovering it along with everyone else finally when the show premiered.
Wow. So talk to me about creating, I mean, the score feels like it comes from this ancient history, the sound of it, you know, it feels old, it feels like generations of stories being passed, but also you have, you know, you're making it in 2022 for a modern audience, a modern show. I mean, there's a lot of especially in a genre that is captivated audiences with so many different shows, but with Rings of Power, was there like a kind of like a trick or a technique to make sure that it had kind of the traditional classical feel, but also feel a little bit more modern, maybe have that modern weight with it?
Well, I think one of the things that, you know, Bear was given the liberty to, which especially in TV shows doesn't happen that often these days, is the use of woodwinds. So I think that, you know, that brings a sense of, you know, and you know, I feel like Bear at his core is a fantastic woodwind writer as well. Like he's, you know, there's been some past TV shows that he's been able to use woodwinds in you know, very interesting ways, and when it comes to that, you know, he can create all these impressionistic colors and, you know, very Rabelian colors with the winds if he has the, you know, if he has the platform to.
Yeah.
And so I feel like this offered the platform to experiment a little bit with woodwind colors, which feels often fresh these days because there are so little woodwinds in film music especially, and TV especially, and so, you know, having, whether it's, you know, kind of soft clarinets in, you know, just kind of background textural stuff, or whether it's, you know, actually having like woodwind chorales there, that's one of the things I think that you were kind of referring to, almost like it brings that eloquence of that, you know, classical world to the show, in my opinion.
I think it's also a testament to the power that the orchestra can actually bring when sort of that the space and mandate is there for that sort of romantic orchestral writing.
Right.
You know, this is not a score, even though it's a modern score in 2022. One of the reasons why it feels classic is because it is not a score that is driven by underlying synth pulses and, you know, sort of groove elements that are pushing it along. Yeah, there's extremely minimal, if any. I forget what Bear has talked about, but it's just like there's an incredibly it's an incredibly symphonic forward score, and then the soloist Henri was talking about, and so the power that comes from the, you know, sort of writing and arranging for an orchestra, the way an orchestra can really work when it's, you know, when it's balanced right, when it's voiced right. I think Bear has done a beautiful job showcasing that in this entire project, this entire season. It is such a powerful, giant, epic sound, and that's coming from the power of the orchestra and Bear's writing for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was wondering, maybe we could we can take like two examples of themes of one of Bear's themes and how you maybe tackled orchestrating it. I would love to maybe start with like Sauron's evil theme and how you and how did you approach it, and what was the orchestration for that?
So
go for it, Henri.
Oh yeah, sure. So within that kind of Sauron's theme, we have kind of, in the larger scheme, we have kind of the orcs, the black music, black speech music. And within that, there's a lot of choral, a lot of guttural singing with male voices. And one of the things we did during the choir sessions that definitely brings a sense of evil is we were experimenting with kind of raspy, almost whispery undertones that we added as a layer on top of the regular singing. So when the males are singing whatever, they're singing black speech, or when they're doing non-pot, that they would actually do a layer of just like really kind of scary whispery, something like that kind of stuff,
really growling it,
really growling, and then so adding that like as a subtle color, just like brings a level of I guess almost psychological terror into
which we were orchestrating in
right
before the sessions happened, so like kind of going in with that vocal plan. Sorry,
go
ahead.
So so that's one thing that comes into mind, bringing out the evil of Sauron and bringing out the evil of Morgoth and the orcs.
Yeah, and it's also cool the sort of connective tissue between that. It's kind of like a basket of Sauron adjacent themes, like Henri was talking about, and they're connected in special ways, and some of them quite subtle. And it's nice to see some of how that even revealed itself over the first season, and then Bear has also set a lot of kind of stepping stones in place for further development in future seasons of music.
Absolutely.
Wherever it needs to go.
Let's jump to the other end of the spectrum and talk about Galadriel's theme. How did you shape and make that what it was?
I mean, that is a beautiful theme, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bear, obviously that's a theme that's introduced quite early, because over the first few episodes you're still meeting characters, and so the themes are sort of coming in, and just his elvish writing in general, the themes that are surrounding the elves are so noble and beautiful. But one thing in particular of Galadriel's theme that, number one, just from a compositional perspective, I love that he starts that theme with this sort of aching minor seventh up, da 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 da, and that there's a nobility in it, but there's also like a little bit of a yearning that comes out right from that very first interval, and there are dramatically appropriate reasons for why that applies to that character in this show.
And it's also distinguishable from other themes, because I know that Bear has talked about how all of his themes start with a different interval.
Right.
So that's another point. Like you immediately from the first two notes, okay, this is Galadriel.
You could be recognizing a given theme. Yeah. Right. And I think that with from an orchestration perspective, from an arranging perspective, which is coming from Bear, that we're then guiding and implementing, it's beautiful to see how wide of a scope that yearning, sort of open and noble theme can exist on. So you have times in the show where we're bringing like all the horns, all the bones, full brass. Everybody is like just power, sort of kind of epic in scope. And then it can also be almost heartbreaking when done in sort of close voicings in the strings, and just be incredibly lush and beautiful and sad at the same time. The moment that Henri actually alluded to earlier that I love are the times when there's, I think it's in the second episode, and then again in the 8th episode of the season, there are moments where Galadriel is underwater, and it's at those moments that Bear suggested, we need to do or instructed, we should do a solo voice here and have Galadriel's theme just represented by a single voice. We had some discussions about whether it should maybe be a child or whether it should be sort of coloratura soprano, a more dramatic soprano, those types of things. And when we first recorded that, which was in the early sessions for the first couple of episodes, we actually experimented with with a few different cool soprano vocalists pulled from the choir who stayed late, and there were the numerous people sort of giving it a try as we sort of found the right, really pure sound,
color and tone.
and
Yeah.
and it was really nice to see their camaraderie as well as they were sort of exploring this theme together, and we're just really pleased with where that ended up dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, the end result is stunning. I mean, for everything, but but thank you so much for breaking those down for me. That's so interesting. And I'm curious because you were talking about all the different world instruments you guys are using and trying to bring, make it feel rich with culture and all these things. Are there any kind of favorite instruments of yours, like unique, really instruments that you guys got to play with that you really just kind of are like having a blast with? Is there anything that jumps to mind?
Well, the choice of instrumentation on the world instruments, that definitely came from Bear. I don't recall a time when I don't think so. When we switched something.
Yeah,
proposed to Bear that we do something different. But
I feel like that definitely happened more. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's true, and I think that the choice of instrumentation maybe we had some input during the orchestral sessions. Occasionally we might be like, oh, this, oboe in this register might be better served with an English horn, or something like that. And so we would run that by Bear. We're like, hey, what do you think? And it was like, oh, that's a great idea.
Brass mute colors, for example.
Right. Yeah. And so I feel like we, as far as our work goes, we definitely had more, I guess, creative input with the orchestral instrument colors rather than the world instrument colors.
Oh, okay.
That said, I mean, the world instrument sort of tapestry is vast. I know that if I had to choose a favorite, it's the music for the Harfoots and sort of how Bear approached that. It's quite delightful and wonderful to work with. We weren't doing any changing of what Bear's ideas were there, but it was really nice.
Yeah, I mean, not just about I'm curious, like, even if it was, of course Bear is selecting these, but I'm curious, as an orchestrator, it must have been fun. Yeah, if there's any instruments that was just fun to work with. Yeah. So.
I think the treat from this project was just that we basically had the entire palette at our disposal. Whatever we needed creatively, it was there, and so that is so rare for us to be in that position where it's just like, oh, great, we have the whole palette at our disposal, and that's great.
Absolutely. And over the course of all the episodes, was there like maybe like a set piece or a scene or a moment that you remember that was fun to dig into and just like get to work on? Or was there? I guess maybe if you didn't have the picture of the stuff, but
that's the thing. Yeah.
On the other hand, that means that what we're really experiencing is musical, right?
Yeah,
it's like
it's true.
Even at the point that we were working, we're still imagining how this is going to look.
Right.
And to some degree, since the effects were still in process as well, there's imagination at all levels still going on that finally comes together when you see the final project.
Yeah, and like Jonathan was saying, like for me, I mean, it just like from the first moments of the opening of the first episode, and like I knew how good the music was and how well it worked when you have that first choral kind of opening, and then when you get that shot of the twin trees of the Valinor, and just like it builds into this, from that choral subtle stuff, it builds into this huge orchestral stuff, and you really sense these different layers of like subtle and how big it can be, and just like the dynamic spectrum of it all was like, oh wow, this is not your typical TV show. This is definitely like, a film. It's like every episode was its own
it's
film.
like back-to-back films.
Film.
I mean,
yeah. And it's a testament to how the show is mixed and the respect and appreciation and love that the show's producers have for the music. That you can hear that both dynamic range from loud to soft, but also the ensemble range from incredibly vast to incredibly intimate. You can really actually hear that in the show because of how it's mixed. It's not all buried Another one that comes to mind for me is the end of the sort of establishing in Numenor, when is it the end of episode 4? But wherever it is, where
the ships,
the ships are,
yeah.
it's just like it just blossoms into the, you know,
oh yeah,
the most Mahlerian, huge, just amazingly glorious orchestral sound. And
Chills.
you know, there are times when we have to work hard to do small balances.
Yeah.
Very, very careful. And are these wind textures going to be felt but not heard? And you know, those things that we're thinking about. And then there are those moments where it is just going to be vast and grand and bombastic and glorious. So you know, that is definitely one of those spots.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, guys, I mean, congratulations again on this amazing accomplishment. I mean, it also, I mean, just to hear your side of it and the stuff that you work on with Bear's music and being part of this gigantic team that brought this entire vision to life over the course of, you know, years coming to the journey to screen. You know, I have it on my 65-inch OLED with my Dolby Atmos system, so it's just you know, not listening on these things here,
right?
So it sounds fantastic. You guys did such an amazing job, and thank you so much for taking the time today to share your process. And I know Ed couldn't be here with us today because of his schedule, but yeah, thanks so much for being, you know, part of the team to come and talk about it. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure, Kaya.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.